Are they ready? They need a little more time. If they're still drinking coffee, let them finish.
Okay.
I think he's lining them up. All right, we're back on the record on State versus Rosario. Mr. Rosario and his attorneys are present. State Attorney's Office is present. Anything else before the jury comes in? Usually when it takes him this long, he's lining them up. They need a minute or are they good?
I need a minute because the coffee's still brewing.
Those coffee makers are quick. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Williams. Apparently we have several minutes.
The state's next witness is the Associate Medical Examiner, Your Honor, and then following that is Detective Thorpe.
Okay.
So if you want, it sounded to me like you wanted to have Detective Thorpe come in and give him some instructions prior to his testimony. I just wanted to make sure, sometimes judges don't like to have breaks between back-to-back witnesses. It's up to you, Your Honor.
I'd prefer not to, just because we've already sent them out. And it's 18, so it's unwieldy to get them in and out.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let me clarify. I did review Williamson one more time. I understand why the state is relying on Williamson, but the facts of Williamson are this. This is a conversation in Williamson. The witness is talking about a conversation they directly had with the defendant, in which the defendant made admissions of an extremely violent nature. In this case, the 18 years isn't coming from Mr. Rosario, it's coming from other people. It isn't necessary to convey the fact that the witness, that Ms. Gutierrez claims she was afraid of him and that she, until he went to prison, she did not feel comfortable testifying. And it can be extremely prejudicial in that there is an inherent implication that Mr. Rosario is very dangerous, and that's why he got the 18 years. Because they're going to be sitting there trying to figure out why he got 18 years. He hasn't been convicted of anything in this case. And you know, the implication is, I don't think it outweighs the probative value of the 18 years. So the witnesses will be allowed to testify to the fact that he went to prison, but not the specific amount of time. And obviously, we all agree they can't testify to the home invasion portion of it. Because you wanted me to clarify for you what the ruling was.
Yes, but I also wanted you to clarify the exact language that you wanted Detective Thorpe to use regarding what he said in his press conference.
Well, what he said on the stand was that he had been removed from the community. I can't tell Detective Thorpe how to word it. I just don't want him to say 18 years. What he testified to on the stand was that Mr. Rosario had, during the proffer, Mr. Rosario had been removed from the community. That's what he said. He said that's the language he used on the stand. Is that not the language he used during the press conference?
Yes, but he said more than that in his proffer. And I just remember because you recited it back, instructing him what to say, and I want to make sure that I get it exactly right. That's all. Because I'm going to lead him through it so he doesn't say anything he shouldn't.
Did you do Thorpe? No, it was.
In the room, you should be able to put it up. Go back to the lightning bolt.
I'm looking. Lightning bolt and do what?
Whatever. Do you remember what she needs it? Just the name and the date.
She PDF'd it to me.
Oh, she did. Okay.
Yes, she PDF'd it to me.
Okay.
In fact, at the end of today,
I'm on the fourth attempt.
you're on a fourth attempt? Yeah, this isn't working. At the end of today, can you PDF me yours too, please? Thanks.
Sure.
Hold on, let me look through the PDF. It would have been towards, Detective Thorpe was towards the end of the morning, right?
Yes, Your Honor. He was.
randomly pick a page. Oh, here it is. Here's the question you asked him. Do you recall what was said at that press conference? Do you guys have this morning's session up?
I do not.
Oh, okay. Because it's page 88, line 1. Do you recall what was said at that press conference that was broadcast? Answer, we released to the media that Juan Rosario and Sean Quinn were persons of interest related to this homicide. That's fine. Question, all right, anything else that you can remember? Answer, we were also seeking any additional information from anybody that could help. That's fine. Question, was the fact of his incarceration referenced to the public? Answer, yes. Question, in what fashion? Answer, we told the community through the media because it was our understanding we were getting information back from the community that Mr. Rosario and Mr. Quinn had an element of fear throughout the community. And so we informed the community that they were no longer in the area, and if that made people feel better, that could come more readily with information. That's why we did that. Question, did you tell the community he was no longer in the area, or did you say he'd gone to prison? Answer, I don't recall exactly what we said. I think it was referenced that he had been sentenced to the previous home invasion, and that's why he wasn't there, which is why I told him not to say the words home invasion on the stand. And then you asked him, do you recall if you did reference the length of his incarceration? Answer, I don't believe so. I'm on page 89 now, line 1. I don't recall specifically that we said a certain number of years or anything like that. If it would make it easier for you, I can forward the PDF from this morning to both the defense and the state.
That would be great, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to do that up and that'll, like I said, I'm on page 88 and 89,
Yes, Sean.
where you can find us. Okay, I sent it. So now I'm looking for session 5.
4, sorry.
4? Okay.
We're at 4 now.
It's okay. It's, gives us something to do.
I apologize.
It's not a problem. Do you know what room we're in?
It's 4th attempt is what it is, not session. And then 4th attempt, Marquez, and today's date. Should say.
Okay. We- It's all right. It's, I know it's one of the lower rooms.
4th attempt, 4/24/17, Marquez.
There it is.
Around 5 minutes.
That's fine. Gives everyone time to do what they need to do. Mr. Weed and Mr. Davila, did you receive the PDF? Okay. They can bring their coffee in with them. They want to do that. Sure. Mr. Williams, are you ready?
Yes, we are. And Mr. Nunley will be directing the associate medical examiner, just so everyone knows who.
Okay. Did you guys resolve the photo issues?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm fine with the detective just taking the stand. I've already told him not to talk about the home invasion, so,
I'll let him know.
and you're going to lead him through it, I'm sure.
Yes.
I take it this means Ms. Gutierrez will be tomorrow?
Depends on where we are, to be honest.
It's 3:30.
We do need a proper testimony on that.
Is that right?
State recognized presence of the jury.
Yes, we do.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Welcome back. Did you guys get enough of a break? I understand we have the world's slowest coffee maker. Y'all are welcome to bring your coffee with you into the courtroom if you want to. All right. State, you may call your next witness.
Sarah Zydowicz. Sarah Zydowicz.
Please swear or affirm that the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Mr. Nunley, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, tell us your name and spell your last name for the court report, please.
Sarah Zydowicz, Zydowicz.
How are you employed, ma'am?
I'm a forensic pathologist, and I work at the District 9 Medical Examiner's Office here in Orlando.
How does one become a medical examiner, please, ma'am?
From college? Starting from college?
Certainly.
Okay. I have a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I went to medical school in Kansas City, Missouri. I then did a one-year clinical rotating internship at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. And then I went back to Wisconsin to do my residency in anatomic and clinical pathology. I have 2 fellowships. One is in cytopathology from Northwestern University in Chicago, and I did my forensics fellowship in Tampa.
Are you board certified as a forensic pathologist?
I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and forensic pathology.
Are there any other fields of forensic pathology other than the 3 that you have identified? I'm sorry, pathology, not forensic pathology.
There are different subspecialties of pathology. So, for example, forensic pathology is kind of a subspecialty, and there are other subspecialty areas in pathology as well.
What does a forensic pathologist do, doctor?
We're involved in investigations of death, and usually it's medical legal investigations. So that means deaths that are not natural, accidents, suicides, homicides, and then also deaths that are unexpected. So maybe somebody who's very young and very healthy and suddenly dies, and you don't expect that person to die. So that would also be the type of case that we would be involved with, trying to figure out the cause of death and the manner of death.
You listed quite a bit of training, education, and that you had gone through. When did you actually become employed as a forensic pathologist, please, ma'am?
Well, I've been at the office here in Orlando for almost 5 years. I started here in 2012, and then the year prior to that was when I was training in Tampa.
Over the course of your career, do you have a judgment as to how many autopsy examinations you have conducted?
Yeah, each year varies a little bit, but it's usually between 200 to 225. So that brings me up around to, I would say, between 1,000 to 1,200.
How many times have you testified as an expert in the field of forensic pathology?
Between 25 to 30.
Did you have the occasion to perform an autopsy on the body of a decedent identified to you as Elena Ortega on September 19th of 2013?
Yes.
What was the general condition of the decedent's body when you first received it, please, ma'am?
So when bodies come to our office, if they're coming directly from a scene, they'll come exactly as they were at the scene. So that means if there was any medical intervention, tubes to help breathe or needles, any of that will be left in place. Also, any of the clothing that they might have on them or near them will also come to our office. And so at the autopsy initially, there were signs of medical intervention, lots of medical intervention, and overall she was kind of dirty and had blood on her head and neck and chest areas.
Did you observe any obvious injuries to her body?
Well, so initially it seemed that most of the injury was in the head area.
Take us through the process, if you would, doctor, of how you go about performing or how you went about performing this autopsy on Ms. Ortega's remains.
Sure. So the first thing that we do is when we open the shroud or the body bag, we take a set of photographs to document exactly what the person looks like when they arrive at our office, and just to document medical intervention and how they look at that time. After we've done that, we'll remove any medical intervention, clean the body if that's necessary, and then we'll do that process over again, do another set of pictures called clean pictures. Then I begin what's called the external examination. So that's exactly as it sounds, noting any characteristics to that person. So hair color, eye color, weight, that type of thing, and anything that might be specific to that individual. Maybe they've got a tattoo or a surgical scar, and just documenting those kind of things. Also, we're looking for any external signs of injuries or diseases. And after we do that external examination, then we move on to the internal examination. And so that means opening the body cavities, removing all of the organs, and dissecting all the organs. And during that process, we're looking for the same things, any sorts of injuries or any sorts of natural disease that might explain why this person died. And then we can add ancillary studies to that. So toxicology, microbiology, it depends on the case, but we have extra tests that we can add on if that will help us determine how that person died.
During the course of your work, Doctor, what injuries did you identify?
Most of the injuries were around the head, and so there were lacerations to the scalp. And when I say laceration, we mean from a blunt impact type of force, not a cutting tool, but a blunt force, either striking the head or the head striking something. So there were lacerations in the scalp. Underneath the lacerations of the scalp, there were multiple fractures of the skull. And then associated with the fractures of the skull, there were injuries to the brain. So there were lacerations of the brain and contusions of the brain. So it's bruising of the brain, and also swelling of the brain.
How many individual or discrete injuries were you able to identify, Doctor?
Well, I can say at a minimum of 3, and that's because there were 3 distinct areas. Now, it could be more than that. So if there was an impact that went into the same exact spot, that could happen. But there are at least 3 distinct areas.
Did Ms. Ortega sustain any injuries, resuscitative efforts at the scene of the fire?
Yes. So, we see resuscitative injuries quite often. And really it's things like rib fractures and fractures of the sternum. That's a pretty common thing. But, she was a very frail and elderly woman, so her bones were very brittle. So she had quite a few rib fractures. There was a laceration to her liver. There was a fracture in her spine. So that's a little bit, more than we usually see. But I spoke with the emergency medical services who were working on her, and they had been working on her for quite a period of time, 20 to 30 minutes. And when they were doing chest compressions, she was on a very hard surface, concrete ground. And the person who was doing the chest compressions was a bigger person, about 6 feet tall, around 200 pounds. And so with that, putting all of those things together, and her being so frail, she had those types of injuries that were they're postmortem injuries.
Did those injuries contribute to her death?
No, she was already dead at that time.
When you say they were working her on the scene, what does that mean?
I'm sorry. That just means resuscitative efforts. So chest compressions if they need them, if they have an airway where they're bagging her to help her breathe, maybe putting in lines for fluids, that type of thing. So advanced cardiac life support.
And chest compressions would be CPR, right?
Yes.
Did Ms. Ortega, well, let me ask you this, how old was Ms. Ortega?
She was 83.
And how tall was she?
Let me check my notes. So she was, we measure length, so she measured at 60 inches. And I say length because height is measured when a person is standing, and so we can't measure a person standing. We measure them lengthwise as they're laying. So 60 inches.
Would you describe her as a petite lady?
Yes, very small. She weighed about 120 pounds.
Did she have any pre-existing medical conditions that you were able to identify now?
She did. She had pretty significant heart disease, so hypertension as well as coronary artery disease. So blocking of some of the arteries, and then also the hypertension. So, and it was pretty significant.
Did those medical conditions contribute to her death?
No, they were just part of who she was as a frail older person.
Approach what, John?
Yes, sir.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's marked for identification as states AD. Would ask you to take a look at these documents, please, ma'am, and don't show them to the jury yet. Your Honor, these have previously been shown to counsel. I'm going to show them to you again, just in another month's caution.
Thank you.
Doctor, do you recognize what is depicted in the photographs contained in State's Exhibit AD for identification?
Yes.
Do they truly and accurately depict the individual shown therein?
Yes.
Offer State's Exhibit AD into evidence as the next specific exhibit number.
Any objection?
No objection.
This will be received without objection. States Exhibit 18.
May I publish 18 to the
You
jury?
may.
Doctor, the first photograph I'm showing you is number 1 out of State's Exhibit 18. What can you tell us about this photograph and the injuries depicted therein? Please, ma'am, over your, show your preference over your shoulder is.
Okay. So what you're seeing here is that, it's a straight-on picture, and so you're seeing what's called ecchymosis around her eye and over the bridge of the nose. So that can be from a couple of different things. Sometimes with head injuries, we'll see that bruising or that ecchymosis in the eyelids. And this can also be as a result of a blunt impact. I favor this more for a blunt impact as opposed to related to the other head injuries. And again, a blunt impact could be an object hitting the head or the face and the head hitting a hard object, something like that. We also see this type of pattern, where it's coming across the bridge of the nose and somebody who's wearing glasses. So sometimes the glasses can actually get hit, and then the glasses impact the face to make that mark.
Do you have an opinion as to what sort of object inflicted this injury?
This one I can't say. Like I said, if there were glasses there, it could have been anything. If there were not glasses there, it could have been a hand, a fist. She was also on blood-thinning medications, so it could even be, something soft, like a pillow, just because she's a little bit more frail and will not clot her blood as easily.
Is there anything else about this photograph that's going in and out of focus that is useful to your opinions?
So it's a little bit difficult to see in this picture, and I think there might be another one. But if you look around kind of her nose area, you'll see some darkening, and that's because she has some soot deposition. So kind of right by the nostrils, there's some soot.
Doctor, perhaps photograph 7 is more illustrative of what you were discussing. What can you tell us about this photograph?
Sure, so it's a little bit dark, but there's soot that is in the nostrils. That one's a little bit harder to see in this picture right now, but deposited around the nostrils.
And that is soot?
Yes.
Products of combustion?
Yes.
Doctor, tell me what is identified as photograph 8. What is significant in this photograph to your opinions and conclusions regarding the cause of Ms. Ortega's death?
This is a profile picture looking from the right side, and so again, this is showing that injury to near the eye area, and you can also see a little bit of this hood in this picture as well. We take pictures of injuries from multiple angles because sometimes you can see different details when you're looking at different angles.
Is there anything else about this photograph that is significant to your opinions and conclusions?
No.
Doctor, photograph 6 of Exhibit 18. What does this photograph show?
Okay, so you're looking at the right side of her head, and this is after I've shaved the hair off. So we do have to shave the hair in areas where there's an injury so that we can really evaluate it and look at it closely. So this is the right side of her head. Those are two separate impact areas, and so you can see the laceration in the scalp. And those are going through the entire scalp down to the skull.
Do you have an opinion, Doctor, as to what sort of object or objects may have caused those injuries?
I don't. It would probably be something, it would have to be something that can have a high momentum. And what I mean by that is it doesn't really fit for a hammer, but something like that where there's a little bit more weight, a little bit more heft to it. So hammer, brick, paperweight, something like that. That's going to focus all of that energy into a smaller area.
Were those injuries caused by a fist?
No.
And Doctor, I'm showing you photograph 5 out of State's Exhibit 18. What does this photograph show?
Okay, so there's two in here that were in the previous picture. And then the third one is in the ear. And so that impact actually went through the ear. So that's where the initial blow was delivered, was to the ear. And that's just me pulling the ear back so that you can see the continuation of the wound.
Do you have an opinion as to what sort of an object caused the injury shown below the decedent's ear?
It would be the same as the other two, something that has a little bit of weight and a little bit of heft that can concentrate force into one area.
And now I'm showing you photograph 4 out of State's 18. What does this photograph show?
Okay, so this is the skull, and at this point in time, the scalp has been reflected or pulled away from the top of the skull, and you can see the fractures of the skull. This is probably the best one right here. And so you can see that it has a very sharp and kind of, it's a little bit circular. And so that's an area where the force was directly applied. And you can also see how it's kind of sinking in towards the interior of the skull. And so that's called a depressed skull fracture. And so when we talk about types of fractures in skulls, a depressed skull fracture is one of the most serious fractures because of that reason, because that part of the skull gets pushed to the inside, to the interior of the head, and it can injure the brain, which happened here. And there's also a fracture here. It's a little bit harder to see in this area, but there's right here as well.
Is there anything else about this photograph that's important to you, Doctor?
Just that you can see the hemorrhage. There's actually a muscle right there. So there's hemorrhage into that muscle as well, and that's not surprising considering all of the other injuries. That's an expected finding with these types of injuries.
And Doctor, just a couple more photographs. I'm showing you what is identified as photograph number 2 out of State's 18. What does this show, Doctor?
So this is showing the brain, and this is after the brain has been preserved in a preservative solution. And the reason that we do that is so that we can evaluate some of the injuries a little bit better than we can when the brain is fresh. And so the way that this is cut is from the front to the back, like so. Okay. And this is kind of like looking at a mirror, so this would be the right side. and this is the left side. Okay, so the right side was where those fractures were and where those lacerations were in the scalp. And the left side was relatively not involved. So what you can do is compare the sides. So if you first look right here, right this area, okay, so that's nice and full. This is regular, normal brain tissue. And then if you look over here, there's a lot of it is missing. Those are the areas where the brain was lacerated and where the brain had contusions. And if you look a little bit up, see these kind of dark areas? Okay, so those are the areas of the contusion or bruising of the brain. So when blood is in this particular fixative, it turns black. And so these are the areas of contusion. And then the other thing that's happening is there's pretty significant edema or swelling of the brain. So one way to look at that is right here. That's an open space. That's called a ventricle. So it's nice and open. And if you look at this one on the right side, it's compressed down almost to a slit. And so that's just demonstrating how much swelling or how much edema is in that brain.
And Dr., one final photograph. Which is photograph number 3 out of States 18. What does this show, Doctor?
So what you're looking at right here is the trachea or the windpipe. And I've opened it, and there's some soot inside of the trachea.
And blue glove, is that your finger?
Yes, that's my hand, and then that's my pickups.
And what is the significance, Doctor, of having found soot in Ms. Ortega's trachea?
Sure. So when someone was in a scene where there's a fire, they could be alive before the fire started, or they could already be dead when that fire is happening. So, with soot in the nose, soot in the mouth, and soot in the airway, she was breathing while that fire was burning. In addition to that, I look for carbon monoxide, and so we can test that in blood. And so she had a fairly elevated level of carbon monoxide in her blood. So that tells me that she was alive when that fire was burning.
What was the level of carbon monoxide in Ms. Ortega's blood?
So it's reported as a percentage. It's called carboxyhemoglobin, and that's kind of just a fancy word. But we look at the percentage. And hers was 29.6. And so to give you an idea, we all have a little bit of this in our blood. So maybe, anywhere from 2 to 5%. That's kind of normal. People who smoke cigarettes regularly, they'll be a little bit higher, maybe around 7 all the way up to 10 or so. Those would be kind of normal levels. We consider lethal amount about 50%, except for people that are not healthy. So people that have asthma or bad lungs or a bad heart or are elderly, a lethal level for them can be around 30%.
Was the level of carbon monoxide in Ms. Ortega's blood lethal in and of itself?
It could have been for her, definitely, because she was a frail person, and she did have a bad heart as well.
Just by a little bit of background, Doctor, why is carbon monoxide such a dangerous substance when you inhale it?
So we have the substance called hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is part of our red blood cells, and hemoglobin is the thing that oxygen attaches onto. So when we breathe oxygen from the air, it doesn't just go into the body. So it's going to have to attach to hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin in the red blood cell is what takes it around to the rest of the body. On each hemoglobin, there's a place for 4 oxygens, right? So that's kind of generally how it works. The problem is that carbon monoxide also can bind to hemoglobin, except it's a lot stronger than oxygen is. So its affinity or its attraction to that hemoglobin molecule is about 250 to 300 times greater than oxygen. So even if there's just a little bit of carbon monoxide around, it really will get in there. So and once it binds, it also will affect any other oxygen that is on that molecule. The oxygen won't come off as easily. So that's the reason why it can be so dangerous.
And going back to the separate head injuries or blows to the head that Ms. Ortega sustained, Do you have a judgment as to how long she would have remained conscious after having those 3 blows inflicted?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit variable from person to person, but certainly with an open skull fracture and a depressed skull fracture like that, as I said, that's considered a much more severe fracture than some of the other types of skull fractures. And so she would probably not remain conscious for very long. I wouldn't expect more than a few minutes.
What's a few minutes to you, Doctor? Everybody has a different definition of what a few minutes is.
A few, maybe up to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Now, conscious, even after she loses consciousness, she can still be alive, just not conscious.
Would she have survived these injuries with immediate medical attention, taking out the carbon monoxide exposure?
Very unlikely.
Were there any other factors in Ms. Ortega's death that you were able to identify?
Just the fact that she was on blood thinning medication.
Did that make a difference in this case?
Well, what that means is that, when she has these injuries and is bleeding, her blood's not able to clot. And so she's going to be losing blood more quickly. And again, when you're losing blood, then you're losing more of the oxygen. So it didn't help. It was a factor that contributed.
What was the cause of Mrs. Ortega's death?
Her cause of death, I'll just say it how I put on the death certificate, was cerebral contusions and lacerations with subdural hemorrhage due to open fractures of the skull due to blunt impact of the head, with contributory factors of carbon monoxide poisoning and anticoagulation therapy or blood thinning medication.
The contusion is a bruise, is that right?
Yes.
And what was the manner of her death?
Homicide.
No further questions.
Cross.
Doctor, so she probably been unconscious within about 10 minutes, you said?
It could be less than that, but she wouldn't be very conscious for a long period of time.
2 minutes or less?
Could be, yeah.
And being unconscious, is she not moving?
Correct.
And she could still be alive, you say?
She could certainly still be alive, yes.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
She may, Your Honor, and be released.
Thank you, Doctor. You're free to go. Call your next witness.
State recall Detective Ben Thorpe.
You may inquire. Detective, you're still under oath for this morning.
Before I do that, we approach briefly. I apologize.
No problem.
Detective, last time we spoke, you described the investigation that you conducted on the early morning hours of September 18, 2013, correct?
Yes, sir.
Leading up to and through your interview with Miss Elena Wilson, the daughter of the deceased.
Yes, sir.
Now, did your investigation end with that interview and on that morning?
No, sir, it did not.
In fact, did it continue for several more months?
Yes, sir, it did.
Now, did you eventually receive the report, a report from crime scene investigator Joanna Fletcher?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you eventually become aware of the report of Fire Marshal Nicholas Incontrera?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if there were additional items taken from the victim's home that were submitted for further testing to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Additional to what was originally?
Additional to the initial submission.
No, sir.
Do you know if there was ever any fingerprint analysis done?
Yes, sir, there was.
Was there any DNA analysis done?
Yes, sir, there was.
Were multiple items sent to the lab with the hope of obtaining results on either of those fronts?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, were there ever any foreign results to victim Elena Ortega?
Not anything from her house that was submitted.
Despite those dead ends, did you continue to conduct interviews and look into leads in this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Specifically, did you conduct an interview with a neighbor or helper of Ms. Ortega by the name of Christopher Vargas?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, when did you first come into contact with Mr. Vargas?
The September 18th, 2013.
Okay, where did that's the morning that you responded to the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And where did that contact occur?
Right outside the victim's residence.
Was he like mulling around, or what was he doing there? Do you know?
He had ridden his bicycle up to the scene, and that's where we made contact with him.
How old was Mr. Vargas back on September 18th of
Objection,
2013?
hearsay.
My recollection, he was a teenager. I don't remember his specific age.
Was he still in high school?
I believe so, yes.
You said he rode his bike up to the scene, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you eventually conduct an interview with Mr. Vargas regarding this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did that interview take place?
Inside of my my agency-issued vehicle in front of the victim's residence.
Without saying what Mr. Vargas told you, did you ask him his whereabouts on the previous night in the early morning hours?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did he become aware of the fact that Ms. Ortega had passed away?
Yes, sir.
Without saying what he told you, what was his reaction and demeanor when he learned of the fact that his neighbor had passed?
Mr. Vargas was upset.
When you say upset, that can mean a lot of things. What is it? What do you mean? What did you observe?
He was withdrawn, taken aback by the information he had learned. He was also cooperative while speaking with him.
When you say cooperative, did he provide you with his whereabouts on that night?
Yes, sir, he did.
Did you take any steps to verify what he told you?
Yes, sir.
And what did those steps entail?
Speaking to his mother.
And were you able to verify that he was?
Objection, based on hearsay.
I haven't heard the whole question. Go ahead.
Were you able to corroborate the alibi he gave?
Objection, based on hearsay.
I'm going to allow the question. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, had you actually spoken to we'll move on. Did you also conduct interviews with some home health aides that Ms. Ortega had at the time?
Yes, sir.
And did that also include not just the home health aide, but her boyfriend?
Yes, sir.
And did you attempt, or did you actually obtain a warrant for the phone records of those individuals?
Yes, sir, I did.
And why did you do that?
Other than their testimony, I had no other way to corroborate the information that they provided me.
And did you use those phone records to corroborate what they told you and where they were that time?
Yes.
And were they truthful?
Yes.
Did you interview a man named Sean Quinn,
Yes, sir.
who had been involved in another crime in the same neighborhood?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
The question was, did he interview a man named Sean Quinn?
Yeah, I was going to say overruled. The question was, did he interview? Go ahead.
Did you interview a man named Sean Quinn who had been involved in a crime in the same neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
Did you obtain a DNA sample from him
Yes, sir.
for the purposes of trying to compare it to anything you found in this case?
Yes, sir.
Did you also interview a local man named Dwayne Curtis?
Yes, sir.
Did you have follow-up meetings with Dr. Zydowicz, the medical examiner?
Yes, sir.
And did you even obtain some video surveillance from a house in the neighborhood?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you watch that video?
Yes, sir, I did.
What was the purpose of conducting all these interviews and obtaining all this additional evidence in the months following Ms. Ortega's murder?
I had nothing to go on from the night that this, or from the night that this happened and into the early morning. I had nothing. So I had to try to exhaust every option that I had to try to solve this case.
And did you feel that those interviews and those attempts to obtain evidence were ways to do that?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say that as of late October of 2013, despite your extensive investigation, you had no leads in this case?
It is correct.
Now, during the course of these months, did a person named Juan Rosario become a suspect?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to locate his residence at the time, or where he lived at the time that Elena Ortega was murdered?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you know the address of that residence?
4756 Turnstone.
Can you tell members of the jury where, in relation to the victim's residence, his house was back in September of 2013?
Within walking distance around the corner.
Now, I approach the witness to what's been marked as State's Exhibit Q and shown to counsel.
You may.
Detective Fork, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit Q. This is a map. Do you recognize the locations listed on it?
Yes, sir.
And what do you recognize the two locations to be?
5020 Turnbull, which is Miss Ortega's residence, and then 4756 Turnstone, which was the residence of Mr. Juan Rosario.
You testified earlier this morning that you were familiar with this area, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Are these locations fairly accurately depicted on this map?
Yes, sir.
I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit Q as the next one to exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
This will be admitted without objection. State's Exhibit number 19.
Have permission to publish State's Exhibit 19 to the jury?
Granted?
Detective Fork, if you could show us, or sort of circle with the laser pointer, 5020 Terminal Drive, where the victim residence was.
5020 Turnbull, Miss Ortega's residence is right here.
And then where was 4756 Turnstone, where Juan Rosario lived back in September of 2013?
4756 Turnstone is right here.
So basically, you walk up the road in between.
Objection, Honor, leading.
Sustain.
Describe how you walk there, Detective.
There's multiple ways. You could quickly come down these streets and be right at the residence, cut through some yards and be straight there.
Now, is it a fair statement that you went and used local media on May 28th?
Objection, Honor, leading.
I haven't heard the whole question. Go ahead and finish the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you use local media on May 28th of 2014 in order to obtain some leads in this case?
Yes, sir.
Without saying what it was there an event that led you to do that on May 28th of 2014? On May 20th of 2014?
Yes, sir.
In other words, so something happened on May 20th of 2014 that led you to go on TV on the 28th.
Yes, sir.
Now, on the 28th, there was a press conference where you were present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember who else was there?
My recollection, it was Miss Wilson, maybe some members of Crime Line, members of the sheriff's office.
Okay. And at that time, you released to the media that Juan Rosario was a person of interest, right?
Yes, sir.
And did you tell the media and the community that you were seeking additional information from anyone who might come forward?
Yes, sir.
Had you heard that there was an element of fear in the community regarding coming
Objection, Your Honor.
forward?
Let me see the attorneys at the bench. You may proceed, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I'm going to start the question from the beginning, all right? Was there an element of fear in the community regarding coming forward with information about this crime?
Yes, sir.
And did you tell the community in the media that the defendant had gone to prison to make them feel better and more readily willing to come forward with information?
Yes, sir.
That was on May 28th of 2014, is that right?
It was May 20th.
The press
I'm
conference-
sorry, May 28th. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
In response to that press conference, did you receive any phone calls, specifically one the very next day?
Yes, sir, I did.
Without saying what that person told you, can you tell us who it was that called you the next day?
Daniel Jobert.
Your Honor. Lack of prejudice.
Oh, okay, sustained.
The person called you the next day,
Yes, sir.
and did you eventually conduct a sworn interview with that person?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when that person showed up to give you that interview, did they identify themselves?
Yes, sir, they did.
And who did that person identify himself as?
Daniel Jobert.
And that's Joudert?
To the best of my recollection.
Okay. Did that person provide you with information that furthered your investigation?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Joubert have a relationship with any members of Mr. Rosario's family?
Yes, sir, he did.
Which member of Mr. Rosario's family?
Mr. Rosario's eldest brother,
What's his name?
Valentin Garcia.
Did you learn what other members of Juan Rosario's family had lived locally at the time of the murder, if not in the same home at 4756?
Yes, sir.
Who were those people?
His sister, Elizabeth Garcia, his other brother, Raymond, Mr. Rosario's father, Santiago, I believe his other brother, Santiago Jr., and then some other peripheral girlfriends and whatnot.
While investigating this case, did you eventually hear the names Janet and Jeanette Gutierrez?
Yes, sir.
Did you learn what their relationship was at the time to Juan Rosario?
Yes, sir.
Objection, Your Honor, from the based on hearsay.
The question was, did he learn what their relationship
All
was?
he's asked was, did he learn? So I'll overrule on that ground.
Did you eventually make an attempt to speak to both Janet and Jeanette Gutierrez?
Yes, sir.
And were you able to conduct sworn recorded interviews with them on June 17th of 2014?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was that approximately 9 months after Ms. Ortega's death?
Yes, sir, it was.
Would you agree that your interview with Janet Gutierrez changed the complexion of your investigation?
Absolutely.
No further questions, Your Honor. At this time, he is subject to the call.
Cross?
You indicated that you obtained video.
Yes, sir.
Where did you obtain the video?
From one of the residences in that community.
Can you show us where the residence was?
Without looking at my report, I don't know the physical, I don't recall the physical address.
Can you look at the aerial photograph and tell us where it's from?
I'd have to look at the physical address for the street and the house number, and then I could probably do that.
Do you have that with you?
I have a report with me, yes, sir.
Can you look at your report, refresh your memory?
You want me to look at the one that I have with me?
Well, did that report reflect where you pulled the video from?
Yes.
You want to look at that?
Okay. Based on my report, the address where the surveillance video was 4833 Spotswood Drive.
Where was that video area?
Are we able to zoom in a little bit better? I could read the street names.
Sure.
Could you go up this way? I don't believe Spotswood is on this map right here. My recollection from the area is that it's in this general vicinity up here.
Well, when you pulled that video, I assume you pulled it for a purpose,
Yes, sir.
correct? Believing that it might contain some evidence as to who the perpetrator was?
I was hoping so, yes.
But that video did not produce any evidence of who the perpetrator was, correct?
No, sir, it did not.
Now, you say you took a DNA sample on Sean Quinn,
Yes, sir, a DNA sample was collected.
and I assume that's because he was a suspect?
Yes, sir.
Well, at the time, there was no DNA to do a comparison, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So you've never had a DNA with which to do a comparison of Sean Quinn, correct?
Could you rephrase that?
There's never been a DNA samples collected or any DNA evidence collected with which to use to do a comparison with Sean Quinn, correct?
If I understand your question correctly, there's no DNA sample in this case that matched Sean Quinn.
Or that you can do a Sean Quinn DNA comparison with?
Correct.
There's no DNA evidence in this case, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Any other questions, Judge?
Redirect?
Not at this time.
All right, Detective, once again, you can step down, but you remain under subpoena and subject to recall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gutierrez stays next to me. Ms. Shelby.
Let me see you all at the bench for a minute. All right, we're on track to finish this case. It's not a problem at all. This witness is going to be rather lengthy, so instead of breaking up her testimony, you're going to recess early. We're going to stay and address some legal issues for tomorrow. We'll start back up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please do not watch the local news tonight. Please do not read the newspaper or look at the internet. You can look at the internet all you want, just don't click on any news stations that are local, all right? You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much. If you leave your notebooks, leave your notepads. They'll be collected up and secured overnight. That's why we put your juror numbers on the back of them. So
Do we meet downstairs again?
no, ma'am, the deputies are going to show you where you meet them. You're going to meet here on the 6th floor. You're very welcome. Have a good evening. Okay. You guys need a break, or you want to go ahead through Williams, or through Gutierrez's proffer?
I'm fine.
Okay, let's bring her in. The whole thing crashed again. Just give it up for today. If you can just PDF me the transcript. I know. It's just having a neurotic day. Yeah, you can.
And Skype can either, so I guess the whole system went up.
Yeah. I'm fine. Yeah, it's actually disconnecting from your end, not mine, but because I can connect to any other session. Yeah, just yours. Okay. Just PDF me the whole thing. Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I did.
You may inquire.
Could you please tell me your full name and spell your last name, ma'am?
Janet Marie Gutierrez, Gutierrez.
Ms. Gutierrez, you talk a little quick, so try to slow your speech down, okay? So obviously, the jury's not in here. I'm going to ask you some questions about the reasons why you came forward with the information you did, okay? Generally speaking, what was the reason you came, or reasons you came forward with the evidence and contacted Detective Fuller?
I came forward because I seen on the news, Detective Thorpe was on the news, and he said that...
Stop. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Hold the mic down to you. You're kind of petite, so put that mic down. All right, and then try and speak up a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, I came forward when I seen Detective Thorpe on the news, and I found out Juan Rosario was getting 18 years in prison.
All right. Now, had somebody, how was it that you saw that news report? When did you see it?
I just came on the news one day.
Do you remember them broadcasting the number of years?
Yes.
Leading up to that point, had you had a concern about coming forward with your testimony?
Yes, I did.
And what was that concern?
Because I was, Juan told me that if I ever said anything, he would kill me. Juan said if I ever said anything, he would kill me.
And remember, try to relax and speak slowly, okay? And when did that conversation, when did Mr. Rosario tell you that?
Before he got arrested.
And that was before you got arrested on September 26th or so, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Now, take us through the sequence of events that led to your coming forward. Is the first thing that you remember seeing the news report you just referenced?
Yes.
Now, when you saw the news report, did you call Detective Thorpe directly, or what did you do?
Detective Thorpe called me.
All right. He called you. Do you know how Detective Thorpe knew to call you?
No, I don't know how he knew to call me.
When you saw the news report, did you tell anyone else about what you knew regarding Juan Rosario's murder of Leno Ortega?
I told my mother-in-law,
And what was her name?
Kimberly Cornell.
Did you tell her prior to telling Detective Thorpe?
Yes.
Was she the first person you told?
Yes.
And then following that was when you received a phone call from Detective Thorpe, is that right?
Correct.
And did he set up a time to interview you over the phone?
No, not at that moment.
Right, so what happened in that first phone conversation with Detective Thorpe?
I told him that the only way I would speak is if he got my sister to safety.
Right, and which sister are you referring to?
My twin sister,
And what's her name?
Jeanette Gutierrez.
Where was she living at the time?
She was staying at the Rosario's home
Why did you fear for Jeanette Gutierrez's safety?
because she was with his brother,
When you say his, who
Juan's brother, Raymond Garcia.
living at, where was she living at the time in June of 2014? Where was your sister living?
At 4756 Turnstone.
Why would the fact that she's living with the defendant's brother concern you?
Because I thought I feared for her life as well as mine.
From Juan Rosario or from someone else?
From him.
And who's him?
Juan.
Now, were you aware that Juan Rosario was in the Orange County Jail from September 26th or so through when you saw this news report?
Yes.
So he was in custody at the time, correct?
Yes, he was in custody.
Why were you no longer concerned when he was sentenced to 18 years in prison, when you were concerned when he was in the Orange County Jail?
I'm sorry, can you
Sure.
tell me the question
So,
again?
when he was in the jail, you were concerned about your safety still, is that right?
Yes.
But when you found out he went to prison, you were no longer concerned, is that fair?
Yes.
Why was the difference? If he's in custody in the Orange County Jail, why would he not be safe?
I thought he was going to be released.
Why did you think that?
I didn't know he was going to get charged with what had happened, why he got incarcerated.
What was your understanding of why he was in the Orange County Jail from September 26th through when you talked to Detective Thorpe?
He was in jail for a robbery on the same street.
Had you spoken to Mr. Rosario about those charges while he was in the Orange County Jail?
I don't recall speaking to him about it.
Had he ever indicated to you what he thought was going to happen to those charges?
He didn't think he was going to be charged.
So he thought he was going to be released?
Yes,
And he told you that?
that's what he said.
And did you believe that that was going to happen as well?
Yes, I believe so.
Is it fair to say that when you got to 18 years, you then knew that you would be safe for at least that period of time?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions on this topic.
Cross.
Where were you living in May of 2014?
I was living at was living on 4756 Turnstone Avenue.
How about in May of 2014?
2014. I stayed in DeLand, Florida.
Were you living in Milan?
Yes.
With whom were you living?
I was living with my boyfriend at the time.
Is that Kimberly's son?
Yes, sir.
Was she living with y'all?
No, we had our own place.
Did y'all have a TV?
Yes.
What time of the day or night were you watching the news when you saw it? You say you saw that story.
I don't recall the exact time.
But can you recall whether it was in the afternoon, morning, or evening?
It was either before I went to work. I think it was before I went to work in the evening.
Where were you working?
At the time, I was working for Emmy's Timeout Tavern.
And what time do you usually go to work?
On some days I go to work at 1, and other days I have to be there by 11.
Did Kimberly call you and tell you she'd seen it on the news?
No, she told me about Detective Thorpe calling her.
Was that before or after you say you saw it on the news?
What, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Did Kimberly call you before or after you say you saw it on the news?
Did she call me? She called me after.
So when you saw it on the news, you didn't make any attempt to call anybody, did you?
No.
You only made an attempt to call somebody after Kimberly called you?
Well, after she told me Detective Thorpe got a hold of her.
Thorpe got hold of her,
Yes.
and then she called you,
Yes. And told me he called.
and then you called Thorpe.
Yes.
So you never made an attempt to call Thorpe until after Kimberly called you, is that correct?
Correct.
And you waited about a week before you called him?
I don't recall how long it took me to call him.
Not only you told him about you protecting your sister, but you also told me you wanted immunity, correct?
I asked for immunity if I said anything, yes.
And you indicated you wouldn't speak unless you got immunity, correct?
Yes, correct.
I have no questions.
Redirect.
Not on this topic, no.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Could you step out of the hallway, please? All right, Mr. Williams, you're proffering the testimony, so you go first.
Judge, this is precisely what the state has been saying for the last 2 or 3 days now, that this would be the testimony. She's now given the testimony in open court. I would just, once again, point out to the court that there is a distinction between the jail and the prison, and she just made it very clear as to why. The defendant told her he was going to beat the home invasion robbery charges, and that's why she didn't feel comfortable coming forward. So I'm not going to argue it again.